guys, welcome back to A Conversation. This is the second half of my conversation with Mrs. Martin about a Christian lifestyle and how vulnerability and love and really plays a huge role in that and what that should look like in our everyday lives. So if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to check out the previous episode, and I hope you guys enjoy.
I like hearing your story. There are two big trajectory changes that I can identify. It's like you went from this quote unquote holy, pure Christian lifestyle, like that Christian bubble, and then you jump into the quote unquote like worldly, quote, sinful life.
Mm-hmm.
And would you say you're at a place right now where you feel like you're trying to discover what that balance looks like, or what it truly means to pursue God wholeheartedly, apart from all of the checklists, but also apart from all of the, I don't know.
That is, okay, good question. That is what I think is the most beautiful thing, because I can have an adult relationship with God, and in my figuring out, I still have the wonder of a child, because I'm like, oh, right, yes. Sometimes like, oh, that was such a God thing. Like, I can't believe that blessing and the joy that I see in my 4-year-old's face. Like, I feel that sometimes too in my relationship with God. For her, it's just, I bought her a cake pop from Starbucks. But for me, it's like, whoa, that's a blessing. God answered prayer. You've got to be kidding me. But the freedom from, like, what boxes am I supposed to check? Who do I have to prove it to other than to God? And he already knows I'm a huge failure. So I think that me embracing that I am a failure, that I am going to screw up, that I'm not going to read my Bible as much as I should, that I'm going to say the wrong thing, but my heart is in the right place. Like I was trying to say, I don't think that checking the boxes is wrong. It's your intent, and it's the way you're going about it.
Yeah.
Like you can have your chore list at home, your list of chores. You can do them well. You can do one well. You can check all the boxes, but you did it really poorly and with the wrong intention. I don't think the check boxes of what it means, and those check boxes are different in different societies and different generations. Even, I'm a different generation than you.
Mm-hmm.
You can see my wrinkles a lot more clearly in this video than you can in real life, and my double chin. But our views of reality and our check boxes are different, and God's looking at the heart.
Yeah.
And I have embraced that part of myself, which then helps me to have a more genuine relationship with God and others.
Definitely. And it shows in your conversations and your actions when you're able to embrace almost like what it means to be human.
Mm-hmm. I think going through the dipping into the world and the worldly things and with the life that I chose, it was just a short time. Honestly, it was like 2 years of my life super concentrated in this bubble where money was key and relationships were so far below that. I went to relationships are my number one, and vulnerability is, and being able to be authentic and talk about my journey. I'm rambling again, but it's so important to me to be able to share my life and how I've screwed up and how I'm viewing my life. Because if I'm not willing to be honest with you, how are you going to trust me and be honest with me?
Mm-hmm.
So I do say the wrong thing. I feel like I shouldn't be working at PA because I'm not going to give the best advice, and sometimes it might be the advice that you need.
Mm-hmm. So just from your experience and what you think, how would you describe what it means to be godly? Because I mean, we obviously have a definition of that in the church. That's the checklist, right?
Right. But if we're not loving God and loving others, how are we being godly?
Mm-hmm. So would you say that's the epitome of what godliness is?
I mean, we're called to be the salt and the light, to stand out. And that's part of it. But I think the heart is really just loving on people. And it's really hard to do that if you don't love yourself.
Wow. Would
If
you say?
don't love yourself, how can you love others? That's the same in a marriage.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't love yourself, how can you be a good partner and love? And if you don't love yourself, what kind of parent are you going to be?
Mm-hmm.
How are you going to love on your children if you can't love yourself?
And
I think being honest and vulnerable about where we are failing and knowing that we can only succeed because of the grace of God,
mm-hmm.
I think that is, I don't want to say godly, but I think that is way more in line with what we're supposed to be. Something that I think about a lot is at my school and at my church, people had put me up on this pedestal and I was fighting to get off. They had put me up on the pedestal because I had checked all the boxes, and I kept trying to challenge it. If you are in a place where you're honestly just trying to check the boxes, sometimes that's what we need to do to survive. Sometimes that is how we're going to get through the next day. That's, I'm reading my Bible. Yes, of course, that's a pattern. That's a pattern that we're trying to establish, and maybe it's not sinking in that day. It's not sinking in, but years later, you'll be, driving down the road and see a sunset, and verses will just come to you, or hymns will come to you, and you don't know necessarily the work that you put into checking those boxes is worth it, but for what purpose? Because if we're trying to lead authentic and vulnerable lives, to have authentic relationships with God and with other people, who are we checking the boxes for? So if you hope that people put you up on that pedestal, you've got the wrong reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're just hoping to check the boxes, you're doing these things for the wrong reasons. And people are going to see through that. People are going to, because people crave authenticity.
Yeah.
People crave realness. And if you aren't,
connection.
Absolutely. So but again, I mean, it's hard. I don't want to judge those who need to do things for coping mechanisms, to check those boxes, to feel good about themselves. That's a different reason too. But that wasn't, I needed to do that at first in high school. And then later I'm like, I don't need to do this for myself. I'm getting more confident in who I am.
Yeah.
And as a child of God, that I don't need these boxes to tell me what kind of Christian I am. I don't need these boxes to tell me who I am as Kristen. I've got that. I'm learning that. I've got that now. So I don't want to check the boxes. Sorry?
It all comes back to the heart intention.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Again, I'm reminded of David. This was something I was kind of struggling with earlier in this year. In the Bible, in some place, it tells us to be pure and blameless. And when I read that, it felt like God was asking something impossible of us and setting us up for failure, right?
Right.
And during one of my conversations with a youth pastor, she challenged my definition of what it means to be pure and blameless. Because if you think about it, arguably one of the most godly men in the Bible is David. He was described as having a heart after God's own heart, right?
Yeah.
But then you look at his life, he was a rapist. He murdered Bathsheba's husband, and Did he murder other people? I can't remember, but
The greatest example.
yeah.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, what God honored in him was how he wholeheartedly pursued God. And I think
Mhm.
at the end of the day, that's like what really matters.
We can have different interpretations of the Bible and how we're supposed to live, and what's real for me might not be real for you, and what living a Christian life looks like to me is different from what living a Christian life looks like to somebody else. We're all on our own journeys, and the only person who can judge us is God.
Yeah.
And if you are you might be doing something completely wrong, completely not what the Bible says, but you're doing it like with the right heart. You know, like my kid who sings all the words wrong to a song, but he sings it so passionately that you're like, that was beautiful. The intent was there, right? It's the intent was there, and God is going to judge the heart, not necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And of course, to clarify, I know we're both on the same page. This doesn't mean that actions don't matter. Like, it
Oh
definitely
yeah,
does
that's not
matter.
what I mean. Yeah.
But we can't judge other people's actions because we don't know what's going on in their heart.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you think, in general, the church is doing at that to promote that sort of culture?
I think you guys are already, I'm in a different generation, so I think you guys are already starting off on a much better foot, because I was stuck in my bubble for far too long, and I didn't start challenging until my late 20s, like my mid to late 20s. And so I talked about, I was really comfortable in my bubble, but I wasn't comfortable that people had put me up on the pedestal and said, well, this is the example of what you should be. At the same time that people were, and I'm saying people, this is in my church and in my church family and family members, they had put me up on the pedestal, and they judged. I felt judged for being there. I felt that I wasn't able to even have bad days or question my faith, because I was supposed to be the example. So why was I questioning? And I also felt judged in another way, because I was being judged for things that I wasn't doing. Like, people were making fun of me for the friendships that I had and judging me, thinking that I was going out to parties, getting drunk, and being sexually permissive, which I wasn't at that time. But I just felt judged all over the place, and I couldn't figure out why. I just couldn't please anybody. And then that's when I started questioning a lot more and wanting to be, I chopped that pedestal down myself, and I got actually quite angry at people for their assumptions about who I should be, how I should act, and all of that. And that's when I tried to figure it out for myself. So while most people go through this in their teens or in their early 20s, I was only figuring this out in my 30s. So, in my rebellion and in my questioning, I did take it too far. I did things that I'm not proud of, and my intention never was to sin. It really wasn't. My intention was never to go into the world and sin. I did, but that wasn't my intention. I still loved God. I was still a Christian. I just didn't know how to live in the world and be a Christian without being the one on the pedestal. So I was trying to figure it out for myself. And, I've said to you before, I do regret a lot of the things that I've done in my past. And I know that I am forgiven. I know that I am, but still sometimes I haven't completely forgiven myself because of my intentions. But the things that I did have led me to where I am today. And if I wasn't slightly ashamed If I wasn't ashamed of what I had done, I don't think that I would have still the same courage in telling you guys in school, you know, like, don't follow what I did. I didn't do the right thing. Questioning and learning for yourself and how you want to live, that's one thing. But, you know, I took it too far, and that's something that I don't want to see others do. So if you can own your own journey, which I didn't at the time, I didn't own my own journey.
What do you mean by owning your own journey?
I think I was rebelling. I knew I was rebelling. So if you can go on your journey and without that heart of rebellion, without that, I'm just going to stick it to them. You know, they already think I'm doing this, so I'm just going to go and, you know, do the same thing that they already think I'm doing. So what's the point? What's the point of living, you know, the way that I thought I should if everybody thinks that I'm doing wrong anyways? So I wasn't owning it. I was immature. I knew I was immature. And now that I'm a lot older, I still make mistakes, but I own my journey. I don't know how to say that in a clearer way.
Are you
I think you're just going
encouraging
into it with eyes open.
with eyes open?
Yeah.
From what I hear, it sounds like you're encouraging people to explore and to kind of create their own culture of what they think it means to be a Christian in the world without doing it for other people because of what other people think.
Yes. Well, exactly, because you go to a different school. Like, we happen to be at PA. If you go to a different school, their culture and the things that they would prioritize are a little bit different, or even from church to church. My parents go to a Baptist church. I was raised in Pentecostal. I went to Mennonite. Everybody has a little bit of a different kind of a bubble. And if you're always trying to fit into the bubble or rebel from that bubble, it's a little bit different everywhere you go. So I think if you can understand that, then your journey might not take as many lows as mine did.
You talked about kind of two extremes about wanting to stay in the bubble and then trying to get as far away from the bubble as possible. So when you say owning your own journey, do you mean trying to find your middle ground instead of trying to get away from the bubble or stay in the bubble?
I think get away from the bubble, but there are good points to the bubble as well. So I was immature and stayed in the bubble thinking that I was pleasing everybody. And then I rebelled knowing that I couldn't please anybody because I felt it was the bubble itself that I couldn't please anymore. The older that I got, the more I started thinking, I want, you know, even my kids, I want them to be thinkers. I want them to think about why they're choosing the faith that they are. My middle daughter is choosing to be an atheist. My 17-year-old son is currently an agnostic, and they're not blinded, but they're thinking their way through it, and their journeys are not done.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And none of ours are.
None of ours are. Yeah. So my early 30s were that big growing time for me. I just took a lot longer to come out of the bubble, and now I'm happily I'm in a good place now.
Describe your place to me.
I love being a part of the PA community. I don't get to go to all the chapels. I get maybe 4 a year, but I love being a part of the communal worship and hearing the stories of our students and our teachers share parts of their journey. I think it is an encouraging place to be. Of course, it's not perfect. I know that. But I think it's a really good place to be. My heart is happy to be there, and I feel like I have a place there. And the fact that I get to share parts of my story and my life, and I want to help you guys to make your own mistakes, not the same ones that I did, but hopefully with the relationships that you have with your teachers and the knowledge that you've gained being generations after me, and you're so much more aware of your surroundings and the life that you're going to go living in, I think, that I hope that you're better prepared to enter the real world. To be honest, I have not been a part of a church for a number of years. After my time of being in leadership at a church and being so disheartened and burnt out at the same time, I took a step back and was going to try and find another church to be a part of. And I was such an outsider. I felt like an outsider every single time I walked into a church. And I would say, I wonder how non-Christians feel, because I don't feel welcomed. I don't feel accepted. I really do feel like an outsider because I'm not a part of their bubble. So I don't know. It's this new world here where we're doing church online, and I get to partake in so many different services from all over the world. I had an old youth pastor who lives down in Texas, and I listened to some of his sermons.
Uh-huh.
And I'm listening to church from all over the world, but church is not what happens in a building. That's the relationships that we have outside of. And I think as a staff at PA, I feel like that's my church. We've got such good, genuine people as staff at PA, from, you know, our Mr. Knight and Mr. Green all the way through to Mr. Krauser. And I just love the people that I work with. They are the community that I love being a part of.
Because you're able to be authentic with them?
Absolutely. And if I wasn't able to do that, I would have a very hard time in doing my job properly. If I wasn't able to be authentic in what I'm doing, I would have a very hard time. I wouldn't be doing the job that I do.
Mm.
Because there's no reason for me to be at Pacific Academy in the role that I'm doing if I'm not able to be open, honest, and vulnerable with the staff and the students.
Mm-hmm. What stands out to me when you tell your story is I definitely don't think a lot of people that I know are to the degree that you were, as in like so enclosed in the bubble and then like super big shock when we go into the outside world.
Yeah.
But even though it's not the same journey, there are parallels, which I think are really important for us to draw as well.
Mm-hmm. And like I said before, I'm not trying to knock the bubble. I needed that bubble. And there are those who need the bubble for now.
Yeah.
And might need to come back to it later on in life too. Just, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But finding authentic people within that place.
Yeah.
Within that bubble, or wherever you happen to be, or wherever you find yourself. I hope that you can find authentic people to be there with you and walk along your journey with you.
Yeah. What advice would you give to someone who's trying to be vulnerable in what would be a rather toxic situation where they're being shamed for, I don't know, maybe their body or their friends or something else?
It takes practice. A lot of failure. A lot of people are going to reject it because it's not in their time. They're not going to want to hear it. It takes practice to be vulnerable. And sometimes we're not in the space, even me, sometimes I'm not in the space to be vulnerable, and I'll have to admit that to the person that wants to chat with me. But there are times to be respectful of the listener or the other party, and there are times that it's an education for both of you, because you have to practice being vulnerable and authentic.
Mm-hmm.
And the other person, maybe they haven't had that. So you have to give them the grace of, you know, knowing that maybe they haven't had somebody be genuine, authentic, and vulnerable for them. And because when you are authentic with somebody, sometimes their vulnerabilities come shining through, and that's why they can't receive it, or they're defensive for whatever reason, and you don't know their reasons, and you might never know their reasons, but it doesn't mean that you should stop trying to be authentic and living an authentic life.
That's powerful. And I think that's the key to pursuing like a genuine relationship with God too. If you can't be vulnerable with other people and God, then who else
Yeah.
are you going to be vulnerable with?
And how many times has God tried to speak to us and we're like, yeah, I'm not ready to hear it. Yeah, not ready. I'm just kind of, I have a party this Friday, so maybe like I'll talk to you on Sunday, okay? Like convict me then, but I'm just not ready for this, and I'll come back to you, and we'll circle back. And life is such a weird journey of highs and lows, and you don't know what you're going to go through next. We're living in this weird period right now. We don't know what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
So are you going to be authentic even in this journey of how you're dealing and how you're feeling?
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, I am an open book. I don't want to necessarily air out all of my dirty laundry on video for everybody to see.
Yeah.
I've had an amazing life. I've had some really, really hard times. And I've made bad choices. I've been on the brink of divorce. I've had lots of heartache. But I know, I'm going to cry. I know how blessed I am. And sometimes it hits me right in the face. Like, I am so, my mom says, and she has probably prayed for me more than anybody else in the entire world, my mother, because that's what moms do. She says that she has never seen more prayers answered than in her prayers for me.
Wow.
So whether that has been relationships or jobs or just healing from injuries or, you know, different things in life, I know my husband and I would not be together now if not for a lot of hard work and marriage counseling, but it honestly is God, because I don't get it. I don't understand how our two personalities and our two totally different worldviews have come together and have worked in this relationship. I know it's God. That's the only, like, it's not me. It is not me. Yeah.
And when we're able to have that humility and share that with other people, I think that's when the powerful work is being done.
I think because we grow up thinking that adults are perfect and that you must have learned something from your teen years, your 20s, and now once you hit 30, you've got to have your life together now, right?
Do you?
I mean, no, not at all. And at the same time, I don't want to grow up because I'm still learning and I'm still enjoying this ride, even though it's hard sometimes. I love living life, and I love living life with the people who I live it with. That's something, yeah. But I wouldn't be who I am today without that bubble that I had. And then it was nurturing and it was amazing, and there was good intent in it to keep us sheltered from the outside world. But I wish that I'd had more hints of how to deal with the outside world and be authentic in who I am, so that I could have gone out and maybe not made as many mistakes. I still loved God and I still slipped.
Yeah.
It happened, and that wasn't my intention, and I couldn't find my way back out by myself. So anybody can slip. It's not but especially when you don't love yourself and you don't trust yourself.
And I don't think it's just that anybody can slip. I think it's everybody will slip.
Everybody will slip in their own way. Yeah.
Yeah.
But being in that place, knowing that I didn't have the intention to sin and I still did, it helps me to have grace for other people who are in the midst of sin, in the midst of their own challenges, in the midst of their own life, because I don't think that people go, I'm gonna sin today. I want to knowingly go against God today. I want to knowingly not do what his best plan is for me today.
Mm-hmm.
It's usually from that place of hurt and that place of needing acceptance and needing love that we try and fill our lives with other things.
Thank you for sharing with us.
Thank you for having me.
It was, every single time I have a conversation with you, it's so enjoyable because it's like a refreshing breath of air, you know? Being able to be.
Why? Why is that? Because I know it's not just me. Like, there have to be other people out there. And if there aren't, are you going to be somebody like that?
Mm-hmm. That's a challenge for you listeners from Mrs. Martin herself.
Yeah. Don't be more like me, but just be somebody. Don't take my example, but be somebody who people can be open and vulnerable with you. Learn to be somebody like that.
Amen.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. And that wraps up my conversation with Mrs. Martin. Thank you for joining us. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, and I'll see you guys next time.